Good afternoon, doctors. Thank you very much for attending today. I'm about to get started on hands down the simplest way to double your injury practice. And I'm just going to make sure, let's see, sharing. No one sees my screen. Good. Get that done. And I just need a sound check to make sure if somebody from my staff would say, great. Thank you, Tanya. Okay, great. So I'm going to get started. First of all, happy holidays. It's the holiday season. I hope you're all experiencing a good non-stressful holiday season. That's the way it should be. And hands down, you should be actually promoting right through your holiday season so your businesses are all doing good. What I want to talk about today is the simplest way to double down or double your injury practice. Now, there is a big secret here. There's a big secret. There's an easy way to do it. There's a hard way to do it. And what I'm going to present today is the easy way to do it. Now, the easy way is not always the fastest way, but it is the easiest way. And here's the big secret. The big secret is that you have to become a professional at what you do. You can't be an amateur at what you do. Now, take no offense. When I first started out in chiropractic, as far as an injury provider goes, I was an amateur, an absolute amateur. I had a doctor's degree. I had a license. I had the right to treat patients, but I wasn't very competent at it. I was very amateurish at it at first. So what is a professional? Professional is highly competent with science and art. And the biggest thing with a professional is they have the ability to predict what will happen. They have the ability, they're so knowledgeable and so competent with what they do that when they take a patient in, they can tell just by the patients that they've handled, they can already start to predict what the outcome is going to be. And they can predict good outcomes. They can predict when they have to work a lot harder, when they have to motivate the patient to work a lot harder. They can let them know their communication is significantly better because they know, because they're competent, because they're confident. Whenever you're around a provider like this, you know, and so does the patient, right? So that's the one thing. Now, when you talk about it, a person can look professional and be very amateurish, right? In my world, somebody who's an amateur is average. In the injury world, you need to be way above average. And you need to make a decision that that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to happen for you. I can tell you that the transformation that occurs when a person makes that decision and then sticks to that decision and commits to that decision, and I'll show you what I mean here, and they commit to it, it makes all the difference in the world. It makes all the difference in the world. So first of all, let's look. I just this morning wrote down, hey, let's look at some signs of a professional. So like, how would we know if we're getting into that condition of being a professional? Remember, a professional is not a static condition, it's a dynamic condition. You become more and more and more and more professional. There is no degree to how professional or how competent you can get. You're always striving to get more. So here's the signs of a professional. They're always striving for better diagnostic, treatment, and documentation results. They don't minimize themselves, then they don't minimize their patient's condition. Now, you may say, hey, I don't minimize myself or I don't minimize my patient's condition. I beg to differ because I've been in the market for a long time now, and I know that doctors minimize their patient's condition, and I know that they also minimize themselves, and that's one of the biggest problems that they have with growing is because they do minimize themselves. I used to, and still do to some degree. Nobody's perfect from it. It just depends on how big of a goal you're going for. How big are your challenges going to be? Because if your challenges aren't if your challenges aren't so large, your goals aren't so large that they're not actually intimidating for you, and you're going, oh, I don't know if I can do this, which is what? Minimization of yourself, right? So you want to strive to not be doing that. And that's a sign of a professional. Always educating yourselves. Always educating yourselves in these three areas. You're always getting way above average treatment results. And you spend a lot of time talking about that. So if somebody wants to talk to you about what you do at a party, that's what you're talking about. You're talking about results. You're talking about the fact that you get great results. That's the sign of a professional. You can predict patient results very accurately, and you're an excellent communicator. That's a sign of a professional. In other words, they can take a look and say, okay, look, this person is way overweight. They're seriously injured. They have all these other body conditions. They can accurately communicate, look, for us to get great results, we're going to have to address some of these other things. I just can't simply rehab you in this and expect these results to be great. They understand that. They know what to look for in the patient. They, one, know exactly how damaged the patient is, and then they also can assess the person's type, their already existing health conditions, things that they need to understand in order to get that patient motivated to make the changes they need to get the rehabilitation results that you're striving for. So you know you're dealing with a professional when they add services that align with the main goal of the clinic. So they're not always just adding services, they're adding services that align with the main goal of the clinic. So if they're going to put a weight loss service into their clinic, into their injury clinic, they know it's because obesity and metabolic syndrome, which is a chronic inflammatory syndrome in the human body, goes hand in hand with injury recovery. So they tie it right in. It's not a separate service. If they're going to add neuropathy treatment, they understand that the main cause of the neuropathy was an injury in the first place, so their injury understanding does not deter from that added service, and they line it, they communicate how it all makes sense. They have a motivated and highly trained staff around them that support the clinic goals because they're training them. They're training together. The professionals train together so that they can gain together as a group. Their staff can explain all the procedures and answer most patient questions as simply as the doctor can. That's the sign that you're around a professional in a very professional atmosphere. They have little problems with referrals. Everybody wants to do business with them. That's the sign. That's when you know you really are starting to make it. Excited in the mission. So they're excited in the mission of what they're doing with their business. They're talking about it. They're obsessed with it. They have no problems going out, talking to attorneys, talking to medical doctors, talking to patients, talking to insurers, talking to anybody who will talk to them. They get excited about what they do. They're motivated by what they do. I want you to think about this. If you know, the thing here was, hey, how to simply double your injury practice. I want you to think right now on this while you're sitting here listening to me. How many times this month did you get out and promote your clinic and your injury practice? How many attorneys did you talk to? How many patient groups did you talk to? How many medical doctors did you talk to? How many people at church did you talk to? How many people did you actually go out and talk to? And you're excited. And the reason why you're excited is because you realize that an injury patient has a 50% opportunity of never fully recovering. So they have to find a clinic like mine in order to recover in. I'm not willing to allow these people to actually put their whole life at risk. That's excited. That's professional. Comfortable with all the financial policies and would pay for the care that they deliver. That's the sign of a professional. So I don't care if you charge $100 a visit, $200 a visit, $400 a visit. A true professional would be totally willing to pay cash for that same treatment for himself or any member of his family, and will do so because they're comfortable. Easy time delegating because they're comfortable and they're confident, addicted to what they do. Listen, I hear all these things about, oh, addiction is bad. Addiction is bad. I can tell you that I have been addicted to work for my whole life. I can tell you that I'm addicted to my wife. I can tell you that I'm addicted to my kids. I can tell you that I'm addicted to self-improvement. There is good addiction and there's bad addiction. Everybody thinks about bad addiction. There's nothing wrong with addiction. There's nothing wrong with being obsessed about things. There's nothing wrong with it at all. Matter of fact, the most successful people I know are obsessed. They're addicted with whatever they're successful at. That's what they spend their time on. That's what they spend their time aligning themselves with. That's what they spend their time listening to and hearing others that are addicted in the same way. And I'll tell you another sign of professional, since I've been dealing with doctors for a long time now, is that professionals realize that the people around them are important. So generally, they have more or better, greater staff pay. So let's look at the signs of a amateur. All right, again, these are just me throwing these down today for this webinar. They have a difficulty predicting patient results. They're not that competent. They have a difficult time with that. They agree with the minimization of the patient's condition to justify poor results. It's just a soft tissue injury. Everyone has these injuries. This is pretty common. Oh, you're doing something wrong. You know, there's something about you, the patient, that is not going well. It doesn't have anything to do with me as the doctor. It's in my private practice, when a patient didn't get well, I took it personally. Okay, I was searching not for what the patient was, how the patient was having this happen to justify the poor results. I was looking at what did I do that actually helped to contribute to the poor results, because that's what you can change. You can change what you're responsible for. And professionals in general, when I say professionals versus amateurs in any field, are highly responsible, right? They take responsibility for the results, right? So amateurs in the injury market, I find they're always talking about, you know, the whole attorney settlement game. How do I get my attorneys more settlements? How do I money? Never on patient, or virtually never on patient results. They're almost never talking about patient results. It always makes me wonder, gosh, how good are your results? You never talk about it. They add services to the clinic to try to make money any way they can, but the services oftentimes are misaligned and disconnected. So it's like they have these separate clinics within their clinics, always trying to make, you know, money, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's disconnected. They have not trained their staff on all their procedures, so the staff struggles to answer patient questions. They don't promote the clinic well. They're always looking for new relationships instead of how to maintain long-term relationships, right? So in other words, they're not looking at a relationship and saying, hey, when I meet this attorney, it's because I want to meet this attorney, and if we practice together for the next 40 years, I want to actually be a part of his world and his business for the next 40 years. I'm not a one and done, have some lunch, let's get married, you send me patients, I send you patients, and it's like that's how that's going to work. that doesn't work generally. So they struggle, in my experience, they struggle with payments and financial policies and insurance payments. They're taking reductions. They're in the whole take reductions game, and they struggle. They certainly would not pay for services that they're delivering, right? They'd actually look to go to a cheaper place, get it a cheaper way. They would actually look for free services instead of paying for the services, and they're always looking to cut corners financially. Why? Because they have a difficult time with money, right? So they get committed to injury work. Amateurs get committed to a lot of things. They get committed for a short time, and then they get bored of it, and they never quite get competent at whatever they're doing. Whatever the next new thing that they're doing, they never quite get competent at it, and then they're already jumping to something else, right? Because it's not really performing the way that they thought it would perform, so they're jumping somewhere else. There's always a greener pasture with an amateur. An amateur is always looking for that greener pasture, right? Instead of taking care of what they are in right now, instead of they're always on a search. You know, if a person gets married and they're committed, you know, greener pastures over there. You can always look and say, okay, here's a man that's better looking, or he's younger, or he's fitter than the one I have, or here's a woman, same thing. Now you're starting to look at greener pastures, right? And now the commitment level starts to go down, and you're not as committed. If that's showing up, it can show up in so many different ways, but it shows up in your private practice as well. It shows up in your injury practice because the providers aren't committed. You're not committed. You're not evolving you're not taking and evolving your clinic and aligning it and going, okay, in this environment, this is what we are putting there. This is, my staff know what we're putting there. My wife, my kids, my children, my girlfriend, my parents, everyone. Amateurs are not addicted to what they do. They're always trying to figure out, oh, I need to relax, or I need time off. You know, this is really stressful. They're not addicted to what they do, in my experience. And in my experience also, they have lower staff pay and higher staff turnover. So there's a lot of randomity around them. And what I mean by randomity, just things are in motion, and it's always kind of going on, and you got all these things going on, but the results are the people around them aren't doing as well. That's the sign of an amateur. So you got to decide in this market what you're going to be, right? So if you are going to be, and you want to double your practice, you got to commit to the fact and get obsessed with the fact that you are going to be your area's top provider. You got to get obsessed with that. So I've been obsessed with it for a long time. Look, I don't minimize the condition. There's 108,000 Americans get injured every single day. There's 252,000 medical visits a day. This doesn't include chiropractic. This doesn't include physical therapy. These are just medical visits, just for injuries. Okay, about 60% of these injuries are spine related, and the spine is the #1 cause of pain and disability, right? So if I look, like I just did a webinar last week on impairment. This is an impairment. Remember, an impairment is a derangement. An impairment is an injury. There is no impairment that isn't an injury. Right now, this impairment means that this person can't walk, right? They can't go on stairs. They can't, there's a lot of things that they can't do, which I explained last week. However, this impairment right here pales in comparison to the trauma and to the loss of enjoyment in life. These injuries are far more significant than that injury right there, even though that injury looks really bad. So I don't minimize the injuries. I never have. I know that spinal ligament injuries are the #1 cause of pain and disability in the world today. And I know the biggest problem in the market is there's too few doctors that know how to, first, accurately diagnose them, then second, get really great results with them, and then third, be able to manage in the medical legal system so your documentation is easy and it supplies everybody with what they need. So it's easy for the attorney, it's easy for the insurer, it's easy for everybody who's involved. That's competency. I know, and I've showed this a number of times, so many different times. I know this right here, this simple exam, good. Neck pain, headaches, pain going down the arms. This is what it looks like in the consult. I know the providers out there are not going, okay, good. What levels would that start to look like? Good. I go in and I do a motor and a sensory exam. It tells me exactly what levels. Here's a graphic of it. It tells me exactly if I want C1, this is where it comes out. If I want C4, sorry, if I want C5, this is where it comes out. C5 nerve comes out between C4, C5 motion unit, right here. So I got to know in an injury case, how much is there back and forth motion here that's irritating the hell out of that nerve? That's called a spinal instability. That's the most common condition in the market today. And yet doctors don't know how to, this simple workup I'm showing you is not being done, right? It is so simple. It's so simple. It would solve diagnosis and what's causing chronic pain in the spine. 95% of what's causing chronic pain is right here. You're looking at it right here. You're looking at the image of it. There's nothing more significant, or nothing more complicated than what you're looking at right here. And if you think it's more complicated, the challenge I want to give you today is, I know if you think it's more complicated, it's because you're not doing this. Because if you were doing this, you'd realize it's not any more complicated than that. And what happens with that is called competency. Because competency is taking things that are complicated and understanding them so well that they become simple. The amateur wants to complicate everything. The professional has already taken the complicated subject and simplified it. That's another key indicator, right? So you take stress x-rays, you look for these excessive motion patterns. You use a top company to do the measurements, especially if in the injury market. And you clinically correlate and know, hey, if I got excessive motion, it could be disc herniation as well. That's a competent spinal ligament injury doctor. What I just showed you, that very simple, how long did that take? 3 minutes? 4 minutes? That's competency. But very little of it is in the market today. Now, once you've decided, then once you committed, and this is what you can produce, you got to get out of obscurity. Now, I am not the smartest guy. I'm not the smartest doctor in the world. A lot of you are way smarter than I am, right? But what I am is I'm one of the top guys in the world on spinal ligament injuries. That's what I am, right? Now, I am because I got committed to it, and I committed to it, and I continuously commit to it. That's why we have webinars. That's why we have Spinal Kinetics as a diagnostic testing company. That's why I've set up, here, look. That's why we published research on the idea. That's why I do podcasts. This year I did 40 of them so far. Okay, I routinely produce content. So one of the things that's interesting is, for me, when I was younger, routinely read obituaries. Sounds like a funny subject, but, and I just pulled this one just off the internet today. I routinely read them because when I read this, here's a great guy who's a farmer, right? So he came here for 81 years, and when he left, he got a couple columns written about him that said he was a farmer. He worked in the sales and service department of two businesses, and this is the church he attended. And that was the summation of an 81-year life. Right, so I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I can't come here and not have some kind of a big effect. And I know a lot of you think the same thing, and you minimize the effect you could have. You minimize yourselves, because I know that you have big goals and big dreams. You went into chiropractic school, and you had big ideas of how many people you were going to help and how big you were going to get. And for some of you, somewhere along the line, it started to get jaded. But it doesn't mean that it has to stay that way. Life's in you today and tomorrow, not yesterday. There's a reason why you have a huge windshield that you look out in the car and a very small rear view mirror, right? That rear view mirror is to look into yesterday. That's about, you should spend most of your time looking in that front window of tomorrow, of the future, of what it's going to be like 5 years from now, right? So I have said, hey, I want to be the top guy. So if I go to Google search, let's just do a Google search real quick. And I Google search my name. DCJD. Good. All right. It goes up. Nationally recognized expert LinkedIn authority on spinal ligament injuries. Nationally recognized spine injury expert. I got Facebook. I got Thrive Global. Wow, he writes. Okay, what does he write on? Here's what NASA teaches us about innovation. The #1 major problem with remote, he writes, he publishes. Okay. What else do we have? What else do we have? Sorry, I'll do that again. He teaches. Okay, he's on the board of a company that does pain management, tech and health, influensive. Gosh, he writes more. Leader Jeffrey Cronk expands on spinal kinetics' role in the healthcare market. Okay, this year alone, in articles, I probably have written and published about 30. So what's the thing that I publish on? Injuries, 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 injuries. I put together a whole training program for doctors and a marketing program for doctors, and I'm just adding a whole nother module to the thing. Now, why? You got to get out of obscurity. You have to get out of obscurity, right? So here's Health Bridge. This is a great chiropractic group. I think they have about 8 centers in Pennsylvania, right? Are you suffering from low back pain? If you're not alone. Number one cause of pain and disability here. An injury to the spinal ligaments is the number one most common cause of this condition. Without a proper diagnosis, how can you make sure you're receiving proper treatment? The most accurate way to diagnose the spinal ligament injury or ligament problem is with a simple yet cost-effective X-ray test. Who wrote this? I wrote this. Okay, did the doctors use it? Yes, they used it to the hilt. Here's a doctor, Casey Bearden. He takes information. Now he wants to get out. This is one of the top providers in Tennessee. One of the top, right? So he goes out to large attorney firms, right? And what does he do? He nails it. I mean, he gets lots and lots and lots of referrals. He does TV marketing. He does all kinds of different things. So you have to get out of obscurity. This year alone in Spinal Kinetics, to help Spinal Kinetics get more out of obscurity, we brought on a COO, Isabel Fleming. Some of you have met her. Some of you are getting calls from her. If you haven't gotten a call from her, you should call her yourself. Call her and say hello. I'm just listing one, Mark Student, one of the top, he's got really a top of the line educational program for injury providers, recommends Spinal Kinetics so that we're more out of obscurity. Myself, this is my wife, Leanne. This is Kevin Harrington. This is the father of infomercials. So this year I decided, hey, I need to actually start to get to much, much bigger people in the market. And I need to align myself. I need to understand how to get our message out broader, bigger, broader, get more expansive. So this is a picture of me putting myself in rooms, putting myself in places that I've never been to before. Here's another picture. This is a picture of me. This is a private helicopter. This is a very, very nice, beautiful helicopter. The guy sitting next to me is the Minister of Finance for the whole UAE, United Arab Emirates. This is my business partner, Haresh Mehta. Some of you recognize this right here. This is Grant Cardone. This is his wife, Elena, sitting next to him. Sitting next to her is the past Prime Minister of Thailand. Now you're saying, what the hell does that have to do with this? How did I get on that helicopter ride? How did I get to be able to do this? Watch. This is a meeting this is where I'm being introduced to the top leaders in the UAE. Now, in order to do that, you have to set up a profile of yourself. You have to send security. You have to send your passport. You have to go through a whole security screening, and then you have to say, well, what is it in your life? What professionally do you do? Why would anybody be even interested in having you meet the royal family? What is my whole criteria? Ligament injuries. This is the room I get into. Now, this is Grant Cardone, his wife. This is the place where all dignitaries in the world meet the king of the UAE. This is a helicopter ride. This guy right here is Sheikh Nayan. He's actually flying the helicopter. Now he's not flying in the helicopter. He's actually flying us in the helicopter. This is Grant Cardone, his wife. this is the Minister of Finance in this helicopter ride, and I'll show you just here in a second. We're flying over Burj to Palms. If you've ever seen pictures of the UAE, Burj to Palms, this is one of the most beautiful things you'd ever see. The city is gorgeous, right? This was me 3 weeks ago. But what gets me there? What gets me there is ligament. What gets me there is the fact that can now actually go, hey, I'm one of the top guys in the world for these ligament injuries. We were flying on a helicopter ride to see the actual, I'm going to show this, to see the largest carpet of flowers in the world. It's Guinness Book of World Records, right? So we were flying in a helicopter with the head of the country flying the helicopter so that we can attend the presentation ceremony of this event. You'll see us coming up the walkway now. Here we are, I'm right behind. This is me right behind with my big head. "35 newspapers are publishing this. This is me on stage of the presentation. Now, what gets me there? What gets me there is expertise, because I decided at one point, a while back ago, matter of fact, I decided in 2005, I decided that excessive motion testing needed to be done on every single patient that I thought that there was a ligament injury. And so I set up 2 companies. Now, this is an image for my staff yesterday of what we do to come out of obscurity. You're familiar with Spinal Kinetics. Spinal Kinetics is a ligament testing company. We do newsletters. You're on a webinar right now. We have a YouTube channel, Facebook. We have dynamic chiropractic ads. We have LinkedIn exposure. We have Twitter exposure. Go Chiro TV, chiro.com. We do Facebook ads. We have a website. That's all to get out of obscurity. I publish articles with the intent on getting a national column in either Forbes, Inc., or a number of other that level of publication. So that's why I publish. What do you think I publish on? Ligaments, ligament injuries. I don't minimize these conditions. Too many doctors in the market today do. In the Smart Injury Doctors program, we have YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, podcasts, LinkedIn articles, Facebook ads, all dumping in. Why do we do this? Because we want educated providers that can accurately diagnose, expertly treat, and simply document spinal ligament injuries for excellent treatment results. When you can do that, the market is yours. When you can do that routinely, the market is yours. It's absolutely yours. So the thing that I tell you, for January comes resolution time, and I think you should set your resolutions like every week personally, but you basically, this is a time for you to make a decision, time for you to decide, okay, great, this is how we ended 2019. Maybe it was good, maybe it was bad, maybe whatever. But if you want to decide that you want to double your injury practice this next year, then you have to decide to become a professional. You have to decide that no matter who the orthopedist is in your area, the neurosurgeons, the hospital administrators, I don't care if you got Dr. Oz in your town, that you would be the one that would be able to competently express what these injuries are, how they're treated, how they're accurately treated, how your center is the best in the area at treating these conditions. If you arrive there, your practice will be doubled. It can't possibly, there would have to be something unbelievably wrong for it not to double. Now, one of the things that could happen, let's say you're seeing already 40 injury patients a month, and that's, you're maxed out the capacity of your building. Well, you can't go to 80 if you don't have any space to do it, right? So there can be other reasons why you can't double. The biggest reason that I see for most providers is they're not willing to replicate themselves. They're not willing to actually systemize their practices, and so they don't have the capacity to double. But I don't care if you don't have the capacity to double as long as you're at capacity, right? Because I'll tell you what, if you're at capacity, you have a different life. Life is different, and that's what I wish for you for this coming new year. I spend a lot of time putting together Spinal Kinetics. Spinal Kinetics is a one-of-a-kind company in the market. What we do is, one, we're independent, we're unbiased, and we have 2 board-certified medical radiologists that are plotting the points that give us these test results. Nobody else does that. We're negotiating a contract to be first to the market with artificial intelligence. That means that AI will actually automatically read the x-rays. Now, is AI going to replace radiologists? Absolutely not. But radiologists that use AI are going to replace radiologists that don't. So we spend all of our time. When I showed you a picture of my wife, thank God my wife understands the mission and she's on board with it. She understands when I'm working here from 4 in the morning, sometimes till 9 at night, or when I'm here from 6 in the morning till 9 at night. She understands why. She understands the mission. She understands that I'm so committed and I'm so addicted that it's what I like to do. Like, sitting there going through a ton of emails, or going through a Instagram account or a Facebook account and sitting there, what a waste of time. It's not a waste of time if you're using it for business, but it's a huge waste of time. And it's just, those are not areas, those are not ways that I want to waste my time. I got other ways I can waste my time. So that's the message that I want to bring to you on this last webinar for 2019. I'm going to open it up to question and answers. Anything that you want to actually ask me, ask away. Is a translation, okay, here's a great question. Is a translation greater than 3.5 millimeters much less significant? Is there no radicular symptoms? Well, first of all, we've got to remember, radicular symptoms, pain is a radicular symptom. So if you're saying, is a 3.5 millimeter translation that has no pain less significant than a 3.5 millimeter that does have pain? Yeah, that's a self-answering question. Absolutely. Is a 3.5 millimeter translation that does not bother the patient at all, does not cause any kind of irritation, doesn't cause any pain, and doesn't restrict the patient in any way, is that a problem? Well, it's less of a problem. I guess the best way to answer that question is, let's say you got a compression fracture that's 10%, you got it in an auto injury, you got a compression fracture at C5 that's 10%. And for 6 months, it's really bothered you. There's a lot of things, it caused a lot of pain. You had to go through a lot of treatment. And now today, 6 months later, it doesn't bother you at all. Now, two years later, it still doesn't bother you at all. Do you still have the condition? Yes. But does the condition bother you? Is it causing you any problems? No, not negligible. That's the way you want ligament injuries to be. That's exactly the way you want them to be. So, that's the ultimate of what you want to have. I hope that answered that question. Here's a question: is that neuro workup exam page in your forms? Yeah, it is in our forms. So what the doctor's asking is in the Smart Injury Doctors program, is that in our forms? Absolutely, it's in our forms. It's in the staff training section of the program. That's exactly where it is. Dr. Cronk, what's the biggest challenge you have on educating attorneys? Okay, great question. I actually don't have a challenge educating attorneys. Attorneys are not hard to educate, but they're like everybody else. They're like educating your child or educating anyone. I mean, just because I said attorney, my first thought was educating your dog. right? How do you educate? You educate through repetition. You educate through repetition. You know, in sales, and sales is just, you know, the idea of taking an idea and getting it across to another individual is essentially what sales is, right? It's persuading someone to look at something the same way that you do. That's sales. In sales, you know, only 2% of sales are made on the first contact, 2% are made on the second contact, 2% are made on the third contact, 4% are made on the fourth contact, and 80% are made on the 5th through the 12th contact. So education of attorneys is not hard. It's just that if you think that education is going to occur with one contact or one interaction, then you're not estimating the correct estimation of effort that's required in order to pull it off. And that's the majority. I mean, when providers say, hey, I want to double my practice, one of the things they have to start to do is they have to start to estimate what is the effort that it's going to take in order to do that. So if I have a provider, let's say I have providers that are doing, you know, $2.5 million a year in injury work. They want to go to 5 million. Okay, great. When you go from 2.5 to 5, you have to understand and correctly estimate the effort that it's going to take in order to do it, no matter what your goal is. No matter what your goal could be, hey, I'm going to dig a ditch I'm going to put in a new water sprinkler system in my backyard this weekend. You got to estimate the amount of effort it's going to take in order to do that to see if you can get that job done. Maybe your effort needs to have one other person helping you. And that would be the correct estimation so that you definitely get it done. So whenever you set a goal, one of the biggest challenges that you have in accomplishing the goal is being able to understand what is the correct estimation of effort. So once you understand that, then it's just a matter of laying out, okay, here's what we're going to do, and here's how we're going to do it. Doubling an injury practice is not that hard, depending on where you're at. Like I said, if you have a capacity problem, then that's a little more challenging. But that's usually not where doctors are. They're seeing 5, 10, 15 new injury patients a month, and they could easily see 30. They could easily see 20 with the same space. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay, let me see if we've got any other questions. Okay, I don't see any other questions. Doctors, here's what I'm going to finish with. If you're not ligament testing, call Spinal Kinetics, start an account, get an account, start ligament testing, start increasing your professionalism in the market. It pays off big time. Even if you don't see it at first, it pays off big time. Start advancing yourself and understanding it's impossible to determine the severity and location of a ligament injury without an excessive motion test. It's not possible. It's simply not possible. And that's the problem. People think it is possible. Doctors think it is possible, or what they do is they sit on a program, they listen, and they say, yeah, that's great, and then they don't do anything about it. Or they sit and say, well, yeah, you have to have an excessive motion test to determine the severity and location of a ligament injury, but then they don't test. That's the error. That's the biggest error that I run into in the market. So don't be that doctor. Doctors, I hope you have a very, very good, happy, healthy, spend a lot of time with your family and spend quality time when you're with your family. I hope you have a great holidays, and I look forward to seeing you on our next webinar in 2020, the end of a decade right now, doctors. And here's the thing, here's the last thing I'll tell you. My friend Grant Cardone taught me this, okay? How you finish your year determines how you'll start your year. So don't slack off because it's a holiday season or it's the end of the year. How you finish your year will be how you start your year. So think with that and have a great holidays. Thank you.